In the fall of 1871, a city was scorched by a great fire. That city was Chicago, one of America's biggest and marvelous cities. A city rapidly increasing in population, thanks to its meat-packing plants and railroad industry. Before Chicago was engulfed in flames, it was the fourth biggest city in America. Then on October 8, 1871, a summer drought started the Great Fire near the O'Leary barn. Rumor has it that it was because the O'Leary cow knocked over a lamp. Whatever the case, hundreds of people were killed and lots of land was burned. The city was wrecked. However, the story didn't end there, and the resilient Chicagoans began the Great Rebuilding. The city changed drastically, and it became the second biggest city in the country, population-wise. Chicago is one of America's most resilient cities because of its quick recovery after such an intense disaster, effective fire prevention measures, and improved architecture after the fire.
The city's quick recovery after the Great Fire is the reason it's known as one of America's most resilient cities. The devastating fire that burned two-thirds of the city would affect most people. However, the Chicagoans took a different approach. Because of their grit, character, and Midwestern self-reliance, the citizens were able to restore the city at an incredible pace. 2 days after the fire, 12 of the banks that burned became makeshift money facilities for the customers. Bankers also started raising capital, including one who sent letters to investors all over the globe. Chicago's determination inspired the quick restoration of the city, which was rebuilt at an unimaginable pace all by themselves. The city also became self-sufficient and was able to rebirth its home all by itself, unlike how Puerto Rico received $16 billion in federal aid after the recent Hurricane Maria. The grit and determination and the self-reliance of Chicagoans allowed them to achieve the Great Rebuilding.
The next reason Chicago is one of America's most resilient cities is because of the effective fire prevention measures taken after the Great Fire. The Great Rebuilding of the city began immediately after the fire. One of Chicago's newest fire standards was an effective building code. It gave laws that the building owners would have to follow in order to operate and stay in business. Some examples of the code are that buildings are required to have unblocked fire exits and enclosed fire stairwells. The fire department also played a major role into the transformation of Chicago. Before the fire, the department was understaffed and underfunded. After the disaster, however, equipment like the sliding pole and fire truck attached ladder were created. With these new inventions, Chicago slowly became one of the best fire departments in the world. Chicago's perseverance comes a lot from its fire savviness.
The improved architecture after the fire is another point that shows the resilience of Chicago. Due to fire safety laws banishing the ability to use wood in creating structures, buildings were built with brick, limestone, stone, and marble. However, these laws were ignored to cut costs. Luckily, terracotta, a fireproof clay, solved this problem. The mass use of this material in buildings made Chicago one of the most fireproof cities in the nation. Another architectural development was the Home Insurance Building, which came to be known as the world's first modern skyscraper. The building then became an architectural standard, influencing cities like New York to develop iconic structures like the Empire State Building, which is America's current tallest skyscraper. Chicago's architecture set a worldwide benchmark on building standards across the country.
Chicago is a city that really emphasizes America's resilient spirit. Its fighting spirit led to its quick recovery, improved fire prevention measures with a better trained fire department and building code, and improved architecture after the fire with skyscrapers and terracotta. Chicago is infamous for the Great Chicago Fire, but deserves even more recognition for the Great Rebuilding. With the city in ruins, Chicago made the choice to keep moving forward instead of giving up in despair. Because of these efforts, Chicago became the second biggest city in America in 1890, until being replaced by LA in 1984, and is now a pioneer in United States fire safety. The story of Chicago is one of a horrible tragedy and an incredible triumph.